You ever get that feeling that you just need to step away from all the social noise for a bit? Well, today we're diving into what that really looks like. We're going to explore this really profound journey that happens when a person makes one simple but totally life-altering decision.
And this right here, this sentence is the heart of the whole thing. What happens when a person decides to stop performing and just starts being? See, the key here isn't some big dramatic blow-up where you tell everyone off. No, it's way quieter. It's an internal shift. He just stops putting on the act. And the distance from others? Well, that just kind of happens on its own.
All right, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to walk through this journey in 4 stages. First up is the awakening, then comes the reevaluation. After that, we'll look at the consequence, and finally, we'll see what it's like at the arrival.
So let's jump in with part 1, the awakening. This is where it all begins. It's this subtle feeling, like you're slowly drifting away from the crowd. It's not about thinking you're better than anyone else. It's just the old social frequencies, all that endless chatter. It just doesn't connect anymore. It's like listening to static.
He starts to really pay attention to what people are talking about. And he sees this pattern, this conversational loop that plays on repeat. First, someone talks up their job, their kids, their status. Then, the conversation slides into gossiping about other people. And it almost always lands on complaining about something. The thing is, once you notice that script, it's almost impossible to jump back in and pretend you're into it.
And that realization leads to an even bigger one. He starts to see that our daily interactions, our little chats, our social gatherings, the whole shebang is basically a performance. And that makes him wonder, what's actually holding our relationships together? Is any of it real?
Which leads him to this really startling conclusion. So many of our connections, they aren't built on truth. They're built on these unspoken rules, these silent agreements to just not rock the boat, to not challenge each other's carefully built illusions. We bond over complaining about the boss, or we just nod along to keep the peace. We're all just helping each other keep the performance going.
So after a realization that big, where do you go? Well, that brings us to our second stage, the reevaluation. And it's really important to get this next part. This isn't some sad story about becoming a lonely hermit. It's actually about discovering a whole new way of being, one that's way more peaceful and solid.
This slide just nails the shift in his perspective. Society, for the most part, tells us that being alone is a problem to be solved. It's an emptiness you have to fill up with noise and people. But for him, it's the exact opposite. Solitude isn't empty, it's actually full. It's not a lack of something, it's the presence of clarity, of strength, of his actual self.
And this is the breakthrough moment. Think about how often we do it. We turn on the TV, scroll through our phones, listen to podcasts, anything to avoid just being alone with our own thoughts. He makes a different choice. He decides to just sit in the silence. And what he finds there isn't some scary void, it's calm. Deep, profound calm.
Okay, but when you change that much on the inside, it's definitely going to have an effect on the outside. That brings us to stage 3, the consequence. Because, well, you can't just stop playing a game that everyone else is still in the middle of without messing things up a little.
Think about all those little social performances. The automatic nod when someone's talking. The, oh, that's interesting when you're totally zoned out. He just stops doing that. Not because he's trying to be a jerk, but because pretending now feels fundamentally wrong to him.
And for the people around him, this is unsettling. They're used to getting that predictable social feedback, and when it's suddenly gone, it causes confusion, discomfort. They don't know what to make of this quiet, still version of him, so they try to stick a label on it, to put him back in a box they understand.
So what's really going on with their reaction? Why is it so uncomfortable for them? Well, when people react badly, what they're really saying is something like this. You're not playing your part. You're not reflecting my own stuff back to me anymore, and your silence is making me look at my own performance. His authenticity becomes a mirror, and a lot of people don't like what they see. But here's the beautiful part. Letting those old performance-based connections fade away doesn't leave this big, empty hole. It's more like clearing a field of weeds so that something real and healthy can finally grow. And that brings us to our final stage, the arrival.
What he arrives at is a totally new understanding of friendship. It's not needy. It's not two people leaning on each other to feel complete. It's two whole, independent people who happen to see and respect the same truth in each other. They just choose to walk the path together for a while, with no demands and no expectations. This becomes his new North Star, his guiding principle. The discomfort of pretending, of being fake, is now way worse than any discomfort that might come from being alone. He gets that a true connection is rare, and he's finally willing to wait for it, instead of filling the time with empty chatter.
And so he lands in this new state of being, a state of peace that can only come from being truly authentic. That constant, exhausting search for validation from other people, it's over. He doesn't need people to get him anymore. He doesn't feel like he has to explain himself. His own internal compass, which he ignored for so long, is now the only guide he needs.
So in the end, this isn't a story about failing to connect with others. It's actually the ultimate success story of finally connecting with yourself. And this whole journey leaves us with one heck of a question to think about. This process proves that authenticity has a price. So, in a world that gives out rewards for putting on a good show, what's the cost of your truth?